All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host Tanya to introduce us and let you know about our speaker for the day.
Hello, my name is Tanya Parker. Have been, this is probably my third or fourth or fifth, I don't know. I've been to a lot of empowerment weeks, and it's been a great learning experience. So thank everybody for coming. You're going to love it. Brittney, I don't know. I'm happy to call her my friend. So I was excited to be able to introduce her. She has a YouTube channel that is called Empowered Para. And it's just so much information. It's information that you don't realize you need to know. And then you're like, oh yeah, that can make it a lot easier. So definitely check her out. I'm excited to hear her speak. Thank you so much, Brittney, for coming. Brittney Nuenzig is here and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and my daughter just got home from school. So if she pops in and says something to me, like she normally does, ignore it. Don't ignore it, but she sometimes comes in and like, Mom. So if she does that, I apologize for her interrupting us. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and see if I can do this again where I was like present mode. Okay, you guys see a big slide that says disempowered to empowered. Okay, and then I'm gonna like do this thing over here, and now it changed to 6 steps to empowerment. Right? Okay, yay. Okay, I'm gonna go back here. Okay, so last time, almost exactly this exact same time last year, I was part of Empowerment Week, and I shared like a very micro view of like a situation that helped me get from a disempowered mindset to an empowered mindset. And it was just a trip that I took to visit my cousin. And on that trip, I ran into some snags trying to get some equipment that I would normally have to do my personal care. And so I had to figure out how to do it without that stuff. And because I figured that out, I felt so good and my confidence grew a lot. So I just wanted to like sort of recap the 6 steps to empowerment because I still believe that those are super, super important. But instead of taking you on like a micro journey of a small situation in my life, this time I'm going to take you on a macro journey of my years in a wheelchair and show you how long it's taken me. I admitted somebody because you guys must have made me the host. How long it's taken me to get to where I am, because I get stuck in comparison mode a lot. And when I see somebody that is doing something cool, and not that having a YouTube channel is cool, but I think that content creators are cool. And when I used to look at people that I would watch videos from who had it all together, I would get really sad and think that I had like something wrong with me, that I just couldn't be as good as them. So today I want to show you the extremely long time that it's taken me to get to where I am, just so that it can hopefully make other people feel better about where they're at. And especially since this is Empowerment Week, I hope that if you are feeling disempowered, that me showing you how long it's taken me to get to a place of empowerment will allow you to feel less bad about where you're at and maybe more hopeful. So anyway, that was long-winded. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, so the 6 steps to empowerment that I went over, that the last one, were your comfort zone. So that's like where you are at the beginning. And that's where you feel confident. You don't have anxiety about, doing things. You are used to doing the things that you do in your comfort zone. So it's just kind of where you feel good and confident. And then usually there's something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's yourself, sometimes it's other people, sometimes it's, a situation like a disability where you get thrust out of your comfort zone, not by choice. And then there's like the fear, because you don't know anything in that situation. So you get into a situation where stuff is unfamiliar and it's scary. And then you have choices to make. You can either retreat back to your comfort zone, or you can decide to just figure the shit out that you are currently dealing with. And then usually there comes some failure, because there's never, an unknown situation without failing sometimes. And then once you get past the failure is the freedom, because you gain confidence. Once you're like, oh my God, I didn't die in that scary situation, then you gain confidence and you get what's called self-efficacy, where you believe that what you set your mind to do is possible to actually do. And if you have low self-efficacy, that means that you don't believe that you are capable of doing the things that you want to do. And the more scary situations you put yourself in, and the more times that you succeed and you realize you didn't die when you failed, the more your self-efficacy grows. So those are the 6 steps to empowerment. And that's sort of what I went over last time. And I'm going to talk about it sort of this time too, but I'm going to just take you like on a macro journey of all the 24 years I spent in a wheelchair. So next slide. Okay, so what does it mean to be empowered? Before we go any farther, let's just talk about what it means to be empowered so that we have that definition. It's really just having the knowledge, confidence, means, or ability to do things and make decisions for yourself. And usually when you have a life-changing disability, all of that stuff is gone because you don't have the knowledge, you've never been in the situation before, you don't have confidence with anything. And usually you don't have the means or the ability to do things because you don't know how, you've never done it before. So all of it has to be learned again. And that really dashes your confidence. And then, then you feel like crap about yourself usually. I wanted to define confidence too, just because it kind of goes hand in hand with empowerment. And confidence means being certain of your abilities and having trust in something or yourself. So it's really just a sense of certainty that you're going to be okay. And when you have something life-changing, like I did, you don't have much certainty anymore. And so being empowered is getting back to a place where either you have certainty about certain things or you feel that you're okay with the uncertainty. So you either are certain about things, I know I can do this, I know I can pee in this place, or I know I can get dressed on my own, I know I can be independent in this, or I don't know whether I can be, and that's okay. Because those are both okay, because there's a lot of uncertainty with having a disability. So that's what empowerment is, and that's what confidence is. When you have something like a life-changing disability, I don't know how many of you on this are paralyzed, or if you are disabled, because some of you might not even be disabled. But for me, I'm talking from a place of having a traumatic accident that changes your life. You wake up in the morning one way and you go to bed another way, and you get skyrocketed essentially out of your comfort zone onto a different planet. So most of the time, have you guys ever seen those like memes where it's like, it talks about your comfort zone and then like there's like a circle outside of your comfort zone and says like where the magic happens? Well, you've like skipped them and you go right to a place called the pound. And that's a bad place to be, because you have your comfort zone where you have that you have confidence, you have things that you know, and then you have your stretch zone, which is like your risk taking, things that challenge you. And it's a little scary, but it's not like insane. And then if you go totally past your stretch zone, you're in the panic zone. And when you're in the panic zone, you're basically just fight, flight, or freeze, and you don't really know what to do anymore. And you're not actually at your best because you're anxious, you're fearful, you don't know what to do. And when you have a disability or a life-changing traumatic accident, that's where you're thrust into. So then what do you do from there, right? How do you get back to your comfort zone? Because that's where we all kind of want to be, so that we can go into our stretch zone without feeling so anxious. So we're going to talk about that. So when I went into my panic zone, I was hurt in 1999 in a snowmobile accident. I was 13 and I was with some friends, and I was supposed to be snowmobiling in one area, and like how probably lots of 13-year-olds, I disobeyed my mom and went to an area that I wasn't supposed to go to because I didn't want to be uncool and say to the boys that I was snowmobiling with that was probably a bad idea. So I was just like, it'll probably be okay. So I went with them snowmobiling in hills that were dangerous in basically the dark. It was after school in December. And so here in Canada, it gets dark really fast. And so it was not light outside, but it wasn't like super dark. But we were snowmobiling. And I crashed with one of the boys. We went down a hill that looked really shallow on one side and didn't really have another side. And so I went to school that day as an able-bodied 13-year-old that, you know, was athletic and had a vision for what my life was going to look like. And I woke up not the next day, but 2 weeks later in the hospital to find out that I was paralyzed, that the boy in my accident passed away, and that my life was never going to be what I had envisioned that day that I went to school on December 2nd. And some people, there's basically three things when you get into the panic zone. Some people fight. And if you fight, you have usually like the extreme optimism, you have goal setting. So this is like, you know, those weird people that are just like, it's fine. This paralysis is going to make me a better person and I'm fine. And I don't know who those people are. I have lots of friends that are like that. And I'm like, who are you? Like, I don't know anybody that, you know, thinks this is an opportunity. But there's few people out there that have that fight. I'm going to fight to get back to the life that I know I can have. And then there's people that it's the flight thing where they're like, I just want to get away from this situation. And that usually looks like suicide, substance abuse, where they're trying to just get away from the hard stuff. And then there's other people like me who freeze. And that usually looks like depression or denial. And for me, it was entirely denial. I was in the hospital. I was just like, it's fine. My life is fine. But I refused to do any of the things that I needed to do to actually live in a wheelchair. So I just decided that it was okay if my mom did all of the things that I needed to do for my life, get dressed, do my bowel routine, path, put my shoes on, everything. I just decided that I was going to defer that stress to my mom. And I give myself grace because I was 13 and I, was young. So it's not like I consciously was like, I want to make my mom's life really hard. And even though I didn't feel comfortable and good about myself not being independent, it felt easier than trying to get independent. So that was me. That I was the freeze. So I'm going to take you guys through sort of my journey to get from this disempowered space where my panic zone was huge. My comfort zone was extremely small because after I was hurt, my comfort zone shrank astronomically, as it does for a lot of people that have life-changing situations. They are scared, and so they shrink their comfort zone to things that are really easy for them. And it's really hard for them to get back to a place of empowerment and confidence where their comfort zone is big and their panic zone is small. So I'm gonna take you through sort of my 24-year journey to how I got from a big panic zone, little comfort zone, to a big comfort zone, little panic zone. So I call this big panic zone area the discomfort or the disempowered zone, and then over here where I have a big comfort zone is the empowered comfort zone, or the empowered situation. Okay. Okay, so this is sort of my like journey. I'm going to give you like a bird's eye view of my journey. So I was injured in 1999 and it's been 24 years since then. And in the first 0 to 5 years, I had a really big panic zone, really small comfort zone. And I'm going to show you sort of what my comfort zone looked like in each one of these situations. And then as you can see, moving through the years, my comfort zone grew and my panic zone shrunk. And I was able to do that with small steps. But what I'm hoping to show you guys is that it took me a really long time to get to be the person that you see on YouTube. I don't know if anybody actually has seen my YouTube channel on this, but if you have, it's taken me a really long time to get to the person that I am, who's sharing how to live life in a wheelchair, how to be happy in a wheelchair, how to do things in a wheelchair. And it was, yeah, just a small steps over this sort of timeline. Okay, so starting at the first 5 years after my injury. So my comfort zone shrank astronomically and my panic zone was huge. What did my comfort zone look like for those first 5 years? There was a really long 5 years. my comfort zone looked like being totally dependent on my mom. I couldn't be far away from my mom. So she couldn't travel. I couldn't travel without her. We couldn't be far away from each other because I couldn't pee without her. I didn't have anybody else that could help me cath because my mom cathed me. My mom did my bowel routine. My mom got me dressed in the morning. My mom was my caregiver entirely. I stayed close to home because I needed my mom, and I avoided social situations that were longer than 6 hours because that was basically like my pee window. So I could hang out with my friends for that long. And every moment of those 6 hours, I was terrified that I was going to pee my pants. And I was terrified that my friends were going to find out that I didn't have bowel and bladder control. So my panic zone, if it like literally it was awful. If I smelled a fart, I panicked because I was like, am I going to poop my pants in front of all my friends? It was really exhausting being me for those 5 years. And even though I wasn't like, panicking every second of every day, and I mostly felt okay. I was just in that denial stage where I was just like, I'm fine, it's all fine. But I wasn't really facing any of the things that were my reality, that my panic zone was huge and that I had a really small comfort zone. And obviously I wasn't going to be able to live with my mom forever and have her do everything for me. So you can imagine the next 5 years after that were a little bit stressful. So that was my first 5 years. And some of the disempowering decisions that I made during those 5 years, because I had a disempowered mindset, were taking homeschooling for my final year of high school because I was afraid of a ramp that was in my school, because I had a boyfriend all through high school and he pushed me everywhere. And he graduated a year before I did. And I was so afraid of the ramp that was in my school. There was a little ramp to go up to like some of the classrooms in one of the hallways. And when I go back there now, I look at that ramp and it's literally like the smallest ramp on the planet. It's probably about, I don't even know, like it's so small. It's so unbelievably small, but I didn't push myself anywhere. I wasn't independent in any way in those 5 years. And I was so afraid of not having him there to push me to class that I stopped going to my high school and took homeschooling. That's how like crazy I was back then. Like that's how disempowered I was. I was just like, I can't do this. And so I organized my life around avoiding that ramp. It was crazy. I did not try to learn my personal care because I thought it was too hard, even though my mom encouraged me very gently and not so gently as I got older to learn my personal care. I just was like, nope, can't do it. Not sharing any of the realities of my spinal cord injury with my friends. I was terrified that somebody would find out that I didn't have bowel and bladder control, that they would think I was disgusting and that they would hate me and never be friends with me. So I did my best to hide that. There were a few times that I like peed my pants at school. I made every excuse under the sun that I was sick or whatever to go home and change. And I avoided social situations that I thought would require other people to help me, because I did not think that anybody wanted to be friends with somebody in a wheelchair. I had a horrible mindset back then about what people thought about people with disabilities. And I just thought people with disabilities were weird. And so I thought I was weird, and I was lucky if anybody wanted to hang out with me. And not that anybody was ever mean to me, because people weren't. They were super kind to me, and I still had lots of friends. But I always had in the back of my mind that they were being nice to me only because they felt sorry for me. That's what I thought. That is literally what I thought when I was in high school. I thought my boyfriend probably dated me because he felt sorry for me. Like I just had a horrible sense of self-confidence back then. Okay, so those are the disempowering decisions that I made in those first 5 years. What made me move into my stretch zone? Turning 18 and feeling ashamed that I was now an adult and I needed my mom's help. So the pain of where I was got big enough to make me want to push myself to face some of the things that I had been avoiding. Meeting other people in wheelchairs was so pivotal. I moved to a larger city to go to university, and I met other people in wheelchairs that showed me what was possible with my level of injury. So I used to make so many excuses about what I could and couldn't do because I was really the only person with a disability that I knew and that I saw. And so I could make any excuse I wanted, and people were really great at making me feel sorry for myself because they didn't hold me accountable. They didn't push me. They just were like, oh, yeah, it must be really hard. And so I believed that it was really hard and that I should feel sorry for myself. And meeting other people in wheelchairs that were higher levels of injury than me and way more independent, I couldn't hold on to those excuses anymore because I was like, well, I see other people that are higher levels of injury than me doing more. So it challenged my beliefs in a really big way. And then meeting doctors that held me accountable and pushed me to set goals. They were doctors that were at the rehab hospital that I sort of rejoined after I was an adult because I was a kid when I was hurt. And when I got to be an adult, I knew I wasn't independent. So I started going to outpatient rehab and meeting those adult doctors. They didn't sort of treat me in such a way that allowed me to feel sorry for myself. Like they were like, we see lots of people in your situation, and I'm sorry that this is happening to you, but you know, you should do better. You can do better. And we see many, many people in your situation doing better. So those were the things that sort of pushed me to go into my stretch zone. So what did that look like? So 5 to 7 years after my injury, my comfort zone grew a little bit. I was now able to cath in bed and in my wheelchair. I had a friend that taught me how to cath in my wheelchair, that taught me how to modify my pants so that I didn't have to get on the toilet. And that made my life so much easier. I could do my own bowel routine with bars to get on the toilet. So I needed something to help get me on the toilet because I couldn't just lift off the toilet seat. I could get in the shower with a transfer board. I could drive alone for very short distances. I would only drive to like school when I was going to university or like the grocery store if I needed milk or something like that. But I wouldn't go anywhere by myself really very often. And I would go out in public by myself occasionally. So that was my comfort zone 5 to 7 years after my injury. I moved out of the house, and the 2 years sort of that I started university, I learned to do all of those things. So that's what my comfort zone looked like. Disempowering decisions I made at this time, avoiding friendships in university because I thought people didn't want to be around me. So I still carried all of those beliefs about myself that people didn't really like people with disabilities. I was embarrassed about my adapted vehicle. So many times people would be going for like drinks or like going somewhere after one of our classes, and they would all pile into somebody's car. And I would never invite people to give them a ride in my vehicle, even though I had a van and I had like so many seats. And now as an adult, I'm like, man, mine would have been like the best place for everybody to pile in and get a ride. But I was too afraid because I was embarrassed about the fact that I had a lift to get in my vehicle, and I thought people would think that was weird. So I never invited people to ever catch a ride with me. Letting my boyfriend do too much. So I lived with my boyfriend at the time, and I let him cook for me, clean, do laundry, do all of our shopping. He lifted me into bed at night, so I was not really improving my transfers into bed. He lifted me on the couch, so I wasn't getting any better at those kinds of transfers. I could basically get in and out of bed if I had to, onto the toilet and into the shower and into my vehicle, but that was it. And I just let him do so much for me because he would. And I just told myself that I couldn't do those things. So that was didn't make me feel good, but I also didn't really know that I was capable of more. And other things like not wearing shorts because I was embarrassed about my legs. So I really harbored some limiting beliefs about my body and, you know, showing my legs, things like that. So those were some disempowering decisions I made at that time. And what made me move into my next stretch zone, breaking up with my boyfriend and having to live alone. That was a really scary decision for me because I knew that I didn't love him in the way that, you know, you should love a boyfriend. It was comfortable for me to be with him. And I was really scared to be alone. So it took me a full year to get the confidence to even say, like, I think we should take a break, because I was afraid that I was going to be alone forever, because I just would tell myself that all the time. But breaking up with him was one of the most empowering things I've ever done. Scariest things, but also most empowering, because then I was forced to live by myself, which, you know, I couldn't rely on him to do all those other things. And then meeting my husband, like, I think it was like 6 months after I broke up with my boyfriend, and my husband challenges me all the time. So I always like, it has always been, it's not always been like a super happy thing, because like lots of times he's like, I'm not doing that for you, you can do that. And I'm like, you're an asshole. But it's great because I have been able to do so much more for myself, because he believes in me when I don't believe in myself. So that's what made me kind of move into my stretch zone. So 10 to 13 years after my injury, what did my comfort zone look like? Well, I became a mom. That was a scary, scary situation, because it was not planned and I was in the middle of university. And that even though it was really scary, I was able to figure out how to be a mom. So my comfort zone looked, that was part of my comfort zone, is being a mom, learning to transfer onto couches and things like that on my own, and doing like cooking and cleaning and things like that that I didn't do with my boyfriend before. So it's not a whole, well, the being a mom is a big thing, but like the other things, just learning to transfer to a few more places so that I was more independent when I was with my kids, and doing the cooking and cleaning. That was a big thing for me, but it seems like a really small thing when you put it on paper. But it was a really big thing for me. It made me feel really good about myself as a mom and as a partner. And so, yeah, my comfort zone stretched a lot in those few years. And some of the disempowering decisions I still made at that time, I'm starting to move into, like, I'll show you at the end, I'll put that visual back on about sort of my timeline, but like for the first half of the timeline, that I'm mostly feeling disempowered. And this is the point at which these like 10 to 13 years after my injuries, when I'm starting to like feel comfortable with my disability, I can, you know, go to the bathroom, and those things aren't so arduous anymore. And so I'm starting to feel more comfortable, and starting to take more risks with other things in life. And so I'm starting to feel more empowered. So I kind of break this into some of the empowering decisions I start to make, and still some of the disempowering decisions that I've been making. So some of the disempowering decisions I'm still making are being afraid to go places alone with my kids. When they were little, I was really afraid to go places alone with them, because I was afraid of what other people would think if like my kid ran away from me and I couldn't chase them fast enough, or if my kid was having like a temper tantrum or something like that and I couldn't pick them up off the floor. I was really worried about that kind of stuff. Instead of just being okay with asking for help from somebody, I was more worried about what they would think about me and my ability to be a mom. So I didn't go places alone with my kids for a while. When my daughter was born, it got better, because I didn't care anymore. But like when my son was little, I almost never went anywhere with him by myself when he was little. Some of the empowering decisions that I started to make were being open and honest with my husband when I first met him. So this is like in that 10 to 13 year span. Because I was really honest with my husband when I first met him. I did not want to live like I had lived with my boyfriend, who I didn't tell about anything regarding my personal care or my disability. It's not like I hid it from him, I just wasn't really honest about it. So I was really honest with him, my husband, about that stuff. And I started being honest with my friends, you know, like if I peed my pants, I was like, oh crap, I peed my pants, I have to go change. And then it would be a conversation about like, oh, you don't have bowel and bladder control. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So I started sharing more of that with the people around me, which was really, really empowering, because I realized that they didn't hate me. And that made me feel good. And it made me realize that it's really not that big of a deal. And I started prioritizing my health, because for years I would try to avoid bowel routine and things like that. And that was just making me unhealthy, because I would try and do bowel routine less and less. and I would try and drink less and less water so I didn't have to pee as much. And I realized that wasn't really healthy for my body. So I started drinking more water and caring about my body and not so much about the convenience or the inconvenience of how that was going to present when I started, doing bowel routine more and drinking more water and stuff. So those were some empowering decisions I made. What made me move into my stretch zone, being a mom and learning how to care for like a baby from a wheelchair, that was obviously a big one for moving me into my stretch zone. Like I didn't have a choice about that, so I had to do that. And then the desire to be more independent, so I could start to feel comfortable going alone places with my kids. So those were two things that sort of made me move into my stretch zone. So what does that next zone look like? 13 to 19 years, that timeline after my injury. So you can see that like my comfort zone is growing, my stretch zone is growing, and my panic zone is shrinking. What my comfort zone looked like in those years was starting to travel alone with my kids. Like I would go places alone with them, even to like, drive a couple hours to visit people. I would go with my kids by myself. I could get dressed in my wheelchair finally, because for years I had to get dressed on a bed and I couldn't get dressed in my wheelchair. I started wearing shorts and not caring what people thought about my body. I started wearing shoes and boots and things like that were hard to put on, because before I was just like, I can't do that. I don't know how to put shoes on. So I started learning how to do that kind of stuff, which opened up obviously my wardrobe and made me feel more confident about myself. I got rid of like the bars on my toilet, and I learned how to transfer to my bed without like a railing on my bed. And I went back to work. I finally used my degree that I got when I was in university. I got a teaching degree, and I didn't use it mostly because my kids were little, but my comfort zone included me going back to work and being a teacher. So those were all the things that I sort of gained the ability to do between those years. And the empowering decisions that I'm making basically way less disempowering decisions, and I couldn't even really think of any disempowering decisions that I was making at that time. So this is now where I'm starting to like make empowering, positive decisions. I'm traveling places even though I'm scared and I don't know what it's going to look like when I get there. So for years I wouldn't do that because I just was like, I am not. And this like was the timeline in which that last story that I told when I was here last year, this timeline is when that story was, when I started traveling places even though I was scared, traveling alone with my kids even though I was unsure of how I was going to handle a car accident. And that seems really stupid, but that was one of the things that I did not do, is travel with my kids anywhere, because I was like, what if I get into a car accident? Now I don't think about that stuff because nobody knows how they're going to handle a car accident. No able-bodied person is like, I am going to make sure I'll, get my kids to safety in a car. Nobody knows that. So I stopped letting things like that prevent me from going places with my kids. I started attempting transfers that were difficult when my husband was home, so that I would feel comfortable doing them when he wasn't home, so that I would feel comfortable doing them in settings where he wasn't going to be around. So like traveling by myself. And then going to work as a teacher, even though I was scared. So I was like terrified of how I was going to be a teacher in a wheelchair. And the first few times were rough, not going to lie. It was not pretty. But I kept at it, even though I was scared. And even though I would say I failed miserably the first few times that I taught. And now it's one of the things that I like to do the most. It's really great getting to talk to kids, and being somebody that they encounter with a disability, and getting to show them, a positive side of disability. So those are some empowering decisions I made in those years. What made me move into my stretch zone? Really wanting to make my kids proud and show them that I'm proud of who I am. So I started wearing shorts and things like that because I didn't want my kids to see me being like having confidence issues, because I don't want my kids to have confidence issues. And I don't want them to ever look at somebody and be like, ooh, that person's weird. Why are they wearing those shorts? I don't want to see their gross legs, or, you know what I mean? I didn't want my kids to ever get ideas like that. So I made sure to present a strong, confident, attitude about my own body. And the more I wore things that I didn't feel confident in, and the more that I presented a confident sort of persona, even though I wasn't confident, it started to come. So like fake it till you make it thing really does help. And I wanted to show my kids that I could be independent. So some of the things that I was learning how to do is transfer to uneven surfaces and things like that. I wanted to show my kids that, you know, just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't do these things. So my kids really helped me sort of push outside of my comfort zone a lot, which is awesome. And I'm so thankful to them for that. Okay, now we're getting to like the 19 plus years in a wheelchair. I had a lot of growth after sort of this 19 plus years. And a lot of it had to do with me making a lot more friends in wheelchairs and really being pushed by them, which you'll see in the next slide. But what does my comfort zone look like now? And it has things like traveling alone, like I'm not afraid to travel all by myself. Even though I don't know what the situation is going to look like when I show up places, I always just decide that I'm going to figure it out. Just booked a trip to Mexico and I didn't even ask about accessibility. And then I was like, oh crap, I probably should have asked if the bathroom was accessible. And we got there and it was fine. And I ended up showering with like a deck chair. And I'm confident enough now that I can figure stuff out. So I'm not afraid to travel alone. I can drive long distances alone by myself or with my kids, no big deal. Exercising, I've been terrible in the last year with exercising, but 19 years, it took me 19 years to even start exercising. And I exercised religiously for a couple of years, which was one of the things that actually helped me the most in my confidence because it helped me gain strength. And when you're stronger, you can do more things with your body. So I started being able to transfer to my shower without a sliding board because I could do a really far transfer now. I can transfer to vehicles and put my wheelchair in. So I can go to a place and rent a vehicle and get myself in and get my wheelchair in, which I could not do for 19 years. I started trying recreational things like hand cycling and skiing. And previous to that, to this timeline, I didn't do that because I was too afraid to get in the hand cycle. I was like, I can't lift myself in the hand cycle or I can't get in the sit ski. So definitely working out and getting stronger helped with that. I started being able to do floor to wheelchair transfers. So that really increased my confidence with traveling and being places alone because I was like, if I fall out of my wheelchair, I can get back in. So I gained a lot of a lot of room in my comfort zone this many years after my injury. So that is sort of my timeline. The empowering decisions that I've made in the last 5 years, I guess, are starting a YouTube channel, doing disability advocacy. I've always kind of done disability advocacy in different ways. I used to do it with like parenting, but I do it like on a larger scale now. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel. I do presentations like this. I do education sessions at my local rehab hospital. I'm part of like research groups that are working on things in my area. So I do it on a larger scale now than I ever have. And I've found a large group of friends with disabilities. And that is one of the things that I think has been the most life-changing over the last 5 years because I have so many friends that are willing to push me to do better. And I get to see how amazing other people with disabilities are living. And it inspires me to do better and strive for more in my own life. So yeah, that's the sort of empowering decisions that I've made in the last little while and the things that I've been able to do with an empowered mindset. What made me move into my like stretch zone these last 5 years? At the beginning, you'll see my stretch zone usually had to do with other people like my kids, or like things that I was like forced to do, like either me being ashamed of something or me wanting to make somebody proud. And now me moving into my stretch zone has more to do with me making myself proud and seeing what I'm capable of, and having people that challenge me, that are in my boat, because not that I don't like seeing and being inspired by other able-bodied people, because I am, but I am really inspired by other people with disabilities because I can see myself in them. And if you can see yourself in somebody and they're doing something that inspires you, then you believe that you can do it too. And sometimes it's hard to believe that you can do something that an able-bodied person is doing because you can make those excuses about how their life is easier or what they're more capable of because they don't have the challenges that you do. That's not always true though, because I think sometimes we get stuck in that and we believe that other people don't have challenges, even though they're able-bodied, and sometimes they have more challenges than we do, depending on what they're dealing with in terms of health, or mental illness, whatever it is. But anyway, so what else? I can't even remember what slides I have now. I've not even been looking at like my slides on my thing. Just one second, I want to see how far down I am. Oh, I think I'm just on the last slide. Okay, so this is the slide that I showed you at the beginning, sort of just of my timeline. And I guess like the take home message here is that everybody's timeline for getting to a place where you feel confident after a life-changing injury is different. And some people, it doesn't take very long. Some people are those fighters who get right to it. They set goals and they get back to all the things that they love that they did before their accident. And it just looks different for them. But they don't seem to take a long time. And then there's other people like me who it really does take a long time. And I have always been the kind of person that has sort of like I have to be pushed into that stretch zone. And sometimes it's other people pushing me into there. Sometimes it's outside circumstances pushing me into my stretch zone. But I seem to have to be sort of like nudged into that stretch zone because my comfort zone is really comfortable. But once you grow your comfort zone, then I feel like that's when the magic happens, because you aren't as afraid to move into your stretch zone, and your panic zone gets smaller and smaller. So you can, as your panic zone gets smaller, then you can get thrust farther outside of your comfort zone without it derailing your life. And I think that's the goal, right? Is to just be able to handle or feel like you can handle any situation. And that's what really empowerment is being confident with the uncertainty and feeling like you're going to be able to handle it. And it takes a long time to get back to there after a disability, because things so, and I feel like you go back to being a toddler, like your comfort zone is like a toddler comfort zone where you're just like, I can poop and pee, eat and get dressed. And then as your comfort zone, as you get comfortable with those things, then your comfort zone grows to include other things. And my whole goal as a content creator is to help expedite people's journeys so their comfort zone goes beyond those simple things. Like, I don't want people to think about pooping and peeing and eating and getting dressed. Like, you want them to be able to think about, aspirational things, like what are they going to do for their career, or, traveling, or anything that, they might have thought about before their injury or disability, instead of just being sort of reduced to everyday bodily functions. Because for years that was me. And even though we still have to think about those things, peeing was a large focus of mine when we were in Mexico. Everywhere I went, I was like, where's the bathroom? How am I peeing here? Sometimes I had to pee with like the door open, or I just had to like pee wherever. So it's not like those things go away. But the goal is that they don't overtake your entire focus. And that's what happens when your comfort zone grows. So anyway, that's my spiel. And I hope it shows you that if you are having a hard time getting to that place of empowerment, it's okay, and you'll get there. If you guys have any questions, shoot, you can ask me anything. Read the chat.
Oh, Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Brittney. You'd mentioned that you had physicians after injury that helped you out. Where do you find these like way after rehab type of physicians? Because
I'm not sure where you are, but here,
Wisconsin, United States, Wisconsin.
So I live in Alberta, Canada, and
Right.
where I live, we have the rehab hospitals here have we have physiatrist is like a rehab doctor, and you can be
Correct.
referred to a physiatrist basically through your primary care physician, and you can do outpatient rehab essentially that way. It's not like it's not super great. Like I wasn't like going to the rehab hospital, get physio or anything like that, but it was mostly just like
Okay.
goal setting, making sure that like they were helping me get on track with like my bowel and bladder and things like that. And I still see a physiatrist like to this day. A lot of people don't continue to keep in touch with their physiatrist. And I just always have over the years because it's helpful to me to have somebody that can sort of assess your abilities, and your primary care physician doesn't understand rehab. So that's where I found my doctors. But I don't know
Okay.
what you guys have there.
Oh, I
Brittney,
was just so lucky to have my both my primary physician and my physiatrist retire at the same time. It was a husband-wife team. So I was scrambling to get a
Yeah.
primary, and now my closest physiatrist is now Mayo Clinic. So, that's a 4-hour drive. So,
Oh,
and but
that
anyway,
does
I've got a
suck.
nurse practitioner here in town, but that's not quite the same. So,
No, that is really hard. I've had I had my physiatrist retire, and it was kind of hard getting in with somebody else. And I just recently had like my neurologist who follows me retire. And so that was really scary. Luckily, I live not right in a big center, but next to a big city. So that's basically where all the stuff is. And it's all like basically all the stuff is for my whole province. So I don't think that I'll ever have to worry about what you're talking about in terms of like, the physiatrist not being in the area that I live in, because the rehab hospital is close to where I live. So yeah, but it is really hard when you can't find a quality physiatrist. And I think that's a problem for a lot of people, especially when you live in a more rural setting. So yeah.
yeah. Well, also, just to let you know, your YouTube channel is great. Thanks for doing all that.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all the people that watch, because half the time I don't even think I know what the hell I'm talking about. I just put stuff on there that I learn and people seem to watch, and for some reason they like to hear me ramble because I am a long-winded, rambly person.
There was one, what was it? Chris, did you still have a question for Brittney? I think you're muted, Chris. We can't hear you.
My mic went off. My actual mic went off. Okay, my apologies for that. Yes, thank you for this presentation. It was wonderful, but I'm going to challenge you here. What empowering decisions have you not made that you would like to make in the next 5 years?
Mostly my disempowering like thoughts stem more around my ability to be an entrepreneur now. And so some empowering decisions that I have not made are to see myself as an entrepreneur and see myself as a legitimate content creator. So I'm in that space right now, but I feel really uncomfortable in that space, and I don't feel like I belong with other YouTubers, and I don't see myself as one of them. So I would say that that is one of the empowering decisions that I have neglected to make, is to enter the rooms that are going to get me to where I want to be in terms of a content creator, business owner, personal brand, all of those things. Jesse, it's
I really
um,
love that question. I was like, ooh, what do I need to do
that was a
in the
good
next
question.
5 years?
Imposter syndrome, Jesse.
Yeah.
Jesse was saying in the comments that she can relate, but it's just imposter syndrome. It feels like you are somebody that is faking, whatever you are, and it's annoying.
Well, that was actually me. I'm in just we do it from Jesse's thing, but I usually
Oh,
use my
I
name.
see.
But that's okay.
I was
But
gonna
yeah,
say, I thought Jesse
living
wasn't here.
living with being, being in that same space, like I've only been in this space for like a year and a half, 2 years, and being around people who've been in that creator content entrepreneur space for much longer, it's just, like you said, it's very intimidating. So,
It's so intimidating. Yeah.
but after, like, when I came into this community, you were already you were already solidified with your YouTube stuff. You had already had all these cool things. So in my eyes, Brittney, you are there already, and you just need to accept that. So you're
Yeah, I definitely don't. I always feel like I'm still just an insecure person that does things anyway. So I'm like a very much like I'm just faking it till I make it, and I'm mostly uncomfortable in every room that I go into. I just keep doing it anyway. Um, but trying to feel grateful for the opportunities I get, like being part of a TV show, and like now I'm getting into like acting and things like that, which I never would have ever imagined doing. And just sort of like seeing where that stuff goes and not trying to feel like I should feel like I belong somewhere, because I'm like, does anybody really belong anywhere? Like, I'm sure that there's people that are, famous actors that still feel like they don't belong, or there's probably content creators that don't know what the hell they're doing. So just trying to feel like that's okay to feel that way is how I deal with it anyway.
And I know that I've shared this at almost every one of your sessions you've had with us, that your story and my story are so alike, and I can relate to your story so much. And so the more that you share it, the more you empower me, right? Like, because I had a slow start too. It took me 10 years to get to a place where I was ready to bust out of my little small comfort zone, and knowing that that's okay, because again, we're around all these people who go out on the internet and show them, like, within 2 years launching these
I know.
businesses and doing backflips on sit skis, and I'm just like, man, I was watching TV at my mom's house 2 years.
I know. I know. I have a friend that was paralyzed 5 years ago, and within 5 years, he got a PhD in forestry. He started a business. He basically, like, his business is like huge in the area that I live in. He is like travels all over the world, and like he just does all these things, and I'm just like, who are you? I'm like, shut up. You're just like, you're making the rest of us look bad. And like, in the first 5 years of my injury, I couldn't even poop and pee by myself. And this guy's like, I'm just going to get a PhD. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to be one of the most successful, like, restaurant, like, suppliers in like the area that we live. Like, it's just crazy. And I'm just like, I don't know who you are, but I find sometimes that men have a quicker start than women. Not that that is like entirely true every time, but just like anecdotally, I feel like women have a harder time getting thrust outside of their comfort zone. Men are very goal oriented, and I think they have that like fight easier. I think women freeze. I think we're like a deer in the headlights. We're just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do now.
I absolutely can relate to that and agree. Oh, your sessions always just make me feel so good, and like just push me even further to be like, yeah, I'm on my own path. This is what I'm meant to do. I can keep making my own advances in my own time.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any final questions or comments for Brittney before we part ways for the evening? No? Okay. Well, as always, Brittney, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your story and sharing how you were able to move from one tiny comfort zone and just keep growing that and creating these stretch zones. I hope that you guys can kind of look at this story and find ways to where you can kind of stretch your own comfort zone. Looking at this like little photo that she has up here, I'm just like, man, I just want to keep making mine bigger. And so I hope that you guys leave here tonight with a game plan to kind of attack this, kind of like how Chris had thrown in that last little question. What kind of empowered actions are we going to take moving into the future and things like that? I just want to thank you guys all for your time today. Thank you for coming and listening to Brittney speak. I appreciate you guys. We could not do these empowerment events without you. If you enjoyed what you heard here, please make sure you share this with some friends. There are still 2 nights left to sign up for. We have Chris Mitchell coming in talking about how to be successful with self-confidence. And then we're going to wrap up the week with our friend Shamika learning about self-care rituals for the new year. So if those things excite you or any of your friends, please go ahead and share the links with them. We will send you a post email later this evening with this recording and with all of Brittney's information. I'll tag her YouTube channel, her Instagram, and how you can contact her. But thank you guys so much for such another wonderful night. And thank you, Brittney, for sharing your story again.
You're welcome. While I'm on here, if anybody is interested in coming to a live event that I'm doing on February 8th, it's all about how to choose a wheelchair cushion. And I'm going to have like an OT on there to answer questions. So I just thought I'd throw that in here just in case anybody's interested in that. If you go to my YouTube channel and you click on the live, there you can already see the live link and you can sign up for notifications to be notified when we go live on February 8th. But yeah, I just wanted to give that little plug in case anybody is confused or, wants more information about wheelchair cushion.
When I link your main YouTube page, I'll link that live on there as well. So then they'll have like link to sign up for that because I think that's really valuable too. So we have no problem sharing that. So awesome, everyone. Well, thank you guys again so much for a great empowerment session. Thank you, Brittney.
Thank you.
Thank you, attendees. And I will see you guys all tomorrow for success and self-confidence.
Thank
Bye.
you.